great to meet you this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet me this morning.
Sure, you're not here for the exotic animal bill, are you?
I am. I'm here for the exotic animal bill.
Oh, gosh. We've had a lot of calls about that.
I understand. So, really, since we don't have that much time, I really just want to...
Thanks.
Really just want to give you a quick overview of the bill, and then, secondly, why this is the right time to get a vote on the Senate on this bill. So, if you don't mind, I'll just get right to it.
Sure, please.
So,
I've got work to do, so I might be a little checked out.
Yeah.
Sorry here.
great. So, so this bill, I do work for an animal protection organization, so it's going to help animals. Let's just get that out of the way. But it also has. It's also going to be able to. Oh, thank you. So it's also going to have a public safety effect. It's going to save help to protect our first responders and our law enforcement responding to some of these animals that are escaping. It's going to save some of our public resources that are used for responding to these incidents, the public safety aspect as well as the coming and caring for the animals. And so this doesn't affect farm animals. There are certain animals that are exempt.
But what exactly does it do?
Basically, it restricts the ownership of large animals. So animals like, bears, for example. There was an incident in our state where a man was mauled by his neighbor's bear. If this bill was a law, that neighbor could have called the police, beforehand and carted off that bear instead, before he was actually mauled. So basically, right now, our state, the state of Bliss, doesn't have any laws, any regulation. We're one of only 5 states that doesn't have any laws at all on the ownership of these types of animals. It doesn't affect zoos, doesn't affect medical institutions, it does not affect other regionally accredited educational institutions. So those activities are going to keep going, but really this is about making sure that irresponsible people that are potentially irresponsible, are not owning these types of animals.
So it's only going to affect private possession? So who's listed as exempted in the bill?
So organizations that are accredited by the AZA, as well as regionally accredited educational institutions, medical and scientific research institutions. So those things are going to continue to go on.
But it is then, so, the small zoos in the area, what happens to those individuals?
So if they're accredited by the AZA or part of their mentoring program, they will be able to continue to keep their wild, exotic animals. The goal here is to make sure that those animals, that there's the right protection for the public from those animals, as well as keeping those animals safe. And generally, those organizations that are accredited by the AZA or part of their mentoring program have...
But given all the issues that are going on in this state, why are you bringing this particular issue to me? There's so many problems going on. We've got children being poisoned by lead. We've got, inner city kids being harmed here. Why should we even care about this bill?
So, Madam Speaker, that's a great point. Those are really, I've been watching the news too. I see that, and I've heard that your staffers have had to respond to a lot of public reaction.
You want to see my outlook? This is absurd. We've got the people's business to do when we're worried about animals.
So that's a good point. This is the people's business. Okay, so I think when all's said and done about the issues that are in the news now, the police accountability issue as well as the lead issue, and when we actually take a look at it, I think you'll see that these issues were apparent in the past, and we could have done something, but now it's too late. Kids are drinking water with lead, which is has permanent health issues, and also the police accountability issues. So these are things that could have been fixed by legislation. So this is something that our organization has identified as a public safety issue that we think now is the right time. And I think this is a great time for you, Madam Speaker, to put this on the floor and give folks an opportunity to vote on this, because I think I know that this issue is also causing a lot of email traffic and things in your office. So I think that these other issues are motivating people to, petition their government to do something. So they're identifying this issue as something that needs to be acted upon, whereas maybe in the past they felt maybe their government didn't do that. So this is a great opportunity for you to distinguish yourself from the governor who let lapse his executive order that did many of the things that this bill intends to do.
But I am concerned, though. First we've got, like I said, sick children, and we've got now what it sounds like from what you're saying the bill does, you're also now going to be affecting these small little zoos. So, I'm a business owner myself, and now it seems like there's a small percentage of zoos that are going to be exempt. I mean, I don't want to be the person shutting down these zoos, these small, independent, family-run municipal zoos. So, what are we going to do about those folks?
Well, those folks can become part of the AZA mentoring program if they have, and be part of that.
How difficult is that?
Well, it's there's a process. It's the start of a process towards accreditation, which is much more difficult. But I think there will be some work that will have to be done for those folks. But I think this is a great bill. I know this is a great. I think you owned a software company, technology company.
That is correct.
Did you guys allow dogs? I used to work for a technology company, and we had dogs in our work, and that was a big thing at my employer, having animals and around all the time. So I think these types of issues, this kind of attention to these issues, is good for the state in general, because I think it has a good creates a good image that we're kind of friendly towards animals, friendly towards protecting our folks, and so this is really the right time. So do you think this is something you can bring to the Senate floor?
Well, I'm still worried. I can't be the senator who puts small businesses out of work. So, are you open to amending this bill?
Absolutely. We can definitely put in some tailor some exemptions for smaller zoos and sanctuaries. We can take a look at that and potentially add that. But this bill passed the House
pretty
narrowly, but it was a bipartisan support.
Yeah.
And a similar executive order similar to this was also signed by our governor, who let that lapse. So, like I said, I think this is a great opportunity to distinguish, if I may, yourself from the governor, who caved to some of his more extreme elements of his party, who were anti-regulation. And I think this is a good opportunity just to do the right thing, because I think it's the right thing for the people of Bliss to be protected and save their resources. In the end, this is going to save us money.
Can I just interject? What do you see of the moms? What do you see of the moms whose kids are being poisoned by lead? It's like, why should animals become before their kids?
Well, I think it's the responsibility of the government to act upon issues that affect the health and safety of their people, of the people of their state. So this is one of those issues that is on the table. All it takes is right now for us to get a vote on the Senate floor. And
how many animals are we talking about?
We really don't know. We really don't know. I know that our biggest city, Kewaukee, has had some sightings of some large animals running around. So we don't really know. But we do know that that's pretty dangerous, and that affects families also. So this is an issue that we can act upon now. We can act upon in the future when an incident happens, when a man, maybe another man in our community, is mauled by a bear.
Have there been a lot of incidences? It just doesn't seem like this is a big issue here.
Yeah, there's been, I think that argument was probably used for the police accountability issue and also the lead in the water issue that's happening right now. And I think when we're really trying to prevent harm right now. So I think this is going to really be a good thing for us, and it's the right thing to do. So thank you very much for your time. I really hope you can consider this bill and get us a vote on the Senate floor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much.
Animal rights, like,
Hi, Speaker Wolf.
you guys.
Will Lowry. Nice to meet you. Thanks so much for taking time to meet with me. today.
Sure, no problem. So how can we help you?
No problem for you. I'm busy as hell over here dealing with this crap.
I'll try to make this quick, and I'll try to make it as painless as possible. So I'm here to talk about House Bill 110. We're actually here to ask for your support in moving this bill to the Senate floor for a vote. This is a bill that's actually passed through the House. We had 60 co-sponsors in the House and 19 in the Senate, and this is related to restricting private ownership of exotic animals. Do you have context on the bill?
Well, we've been getting a lot of emails about this, so yes.
Sure, I understand that. Yeah, we have a lot of supporters that are very interested in getting this through. And so I'm really here today, again, to ask for your support and getting it through to the Senate floor. But I do understand, and I want to fully acknowledge that I know from the media reports there's a lot going on in Bliss these days, and I know that our calls have probably taken some of your staff's time. So my hope with this meeting here today is to, one, get your support in the vote, but also answer any questions and see if there's anything we can do to free up some of your resources or alleviate some of the stress so that you guys can deal with some of the other issues you're facing. Okay? I'm going to start by talking about the purpose of the bill, and feel free to stop me or ask questions as you like. And so this is a bill that's intended to provide some prohibitions around the private ownership of exotic animals. And really, we're not calling out all animals, so we're not targeting people that might have small spiders or lizards or things of that nature. You know, we are targeting larger animals such as big cats or bears or things of that nature, hyenas, kangaroos. And the bill really has three purposes. You know, the first purpose is sort of a public safety measure. So you might be surprised to know there's been probably in the last couple of decades over 2,000, you know, either attacks or escapes or seizures of wild animals, you know, across the United States. There's also the risk of transmission of disease. And so, you know, you might know here in Bliss, I think you're probably aware there was a wild cat loose in the city of Kewaukee that consumed significant police resources. There was an executive order previously authorized by Governor Skipper that was related to a pet bear that had, you know, actually created 600 wounds on someone. And so this is something at a national level. It's actually something at a very local level as well.
Yeah, so I've only actually heard about those two incidences. So how widespread is this problem here in Bliss?
Yeah, and so those are the two key incidents. I think part of the issue is related to that question, which is we really don't know. Right now, without, you know, having any laws or restrictions on private ownership of exotics, we just don't know how many animals that are out there. And part of that creates concern, you know, whether it's a first responder going out to assist on an ambulance or a police call, there may or may not be a tiger in the backyard. You know, I'd actually point you to this map of Tampa on our fact sheet, you know, where they have started tracking exotics, and you can actually see the number that are out there. And so there's been a couple incidents, and I'm not at all here to tell you that you're going to have 100 wild animals running loose tomorrow, but it's one of those issues that we feel like with this very non-controversial bill that has bipartisan support, you can see at the bottom of the fact sheet, so many of the national group have issued statements in support of restricting private exotic ownership. We feel like it's something that we can very easily and non-controversially get ahead of.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the rest of the bill, I just do want to be clear, is it's not a blanket restriction. We've got permits so that people that currently have animals in place that, you know, if they have these animals in place, they can apply for a permit meeting certain requirements, they can keep these animals.
Can I just interject? Like,
Sure.
You know, all the crap that's going on. I mean, look at my inbox. I'm getting flooded with stuff from you guys. I've got angry moms about the kids. Like, why should we care? What do you say to the moms that I'm getting emails from saying, you know, you care more about some stupid animal than you do my own child is being poisoned in our community, these underprivileged communities? Like, you value animals more than people?
It's a fantastic question. I'm glad you brought it up. And so I'm not here today to tell you that our issue is more important than the other issues. That would be completely foolish. And even though we're animal people, that's not why I'm here. And so I would answer that question in a few ways. One, this is a non-controversial bill. You know, we think it has support. But two, we think this bill can actually help free up resources for some of those issues that you're currently dealing with. And I'll explain that. And so, you know, we believe, you know, incidents where, like the cat in Kewaukee that's loose, requires huge police response. You know, I think there's dozens of police officers, you know, for the chimpanzees in Nevada or the Zanesville incident where 50-some animals escaped. We don't want those incidents. We don't want your police consumed with that. When there are issues of the nature that are happening today, like the police shooting, we would rather your police officers be free to work on community relations or whatever it might be to help, you know, mend those fences that are causing some of those issues. So we believe we can free up police resources. We also believe that with the USDA supporting sort of private or restrictions on private ownership, we can free up USDA resources so we don't have people going with frivolous requests for licenses to keep a tiger in their backyard. Then they can help you with the water issue that you're currently dealing with. So those are ways that we think that can help. But I would also tell you this, I understand and I respect the issue. We've done a lot of work in lower income communities with animals. Like I understand the plight those people deal with. We are going to ask our supporters to stop the calls and emails. We feel like our voice has been heard. This is a copy of an email draft that we're actually getting ready to send out tonight. And it's basically asking our supporters to stop inundating you with calls and emails. Like I said, we feel like this is important. I'm not here to tell you it's more important than the current
I'm all
bill.
for that.
Yeah, that would be great.
So we feel like if we can pull the lever back, free up
Yeah,
your
that would be
resources, but
great.
we do still feel like this bill, if put to a vote, can help you with the issues.
So now, who does this exactly apply to? I'm still unclear.
Sure. No, this bill would apply to anyone in possession of any of these animals defined in the definitions after the implementation date of June 1st, 2017. And I just want to be very clear, we have purposely set an extended implementation date to give people time to ramp up and to come into compliance if needed. And so if anyone has any of the covered animals, like I said, there's a list in the bill of kangaroo or a bear or a hyena or a wolf or a tiger or a bobcat, things like that, and they are not in compliance by the 1st of June of 2017, then this bill would impact them. But there are exemptions.
Okay. So who are the yeah, that's exactly what I'd like to know.
Sure. Yep. And we have a whole list of exemptions. So our intent was to craft this, again, as a non-controversial bill. And so we have exemptions for things like wildlife rehabilitators. We have exemptions for things like accredited zoological institutions. And we've cast a pretty broad net around the different accreditations for that. People that might have a service animal are exempted from this. People that might be transporting an injured animal temporarily. And so there's a wide list of exemptions, medical research institutes, and those types of things.
So on this, the zoo exemption, so now why have we casted that so broad to include all of them?
Yep. And the main driver for that was that we were trying to be non-controversial. And so right now, you may be familiar, Bliss is one of a very small handful of states that has no laws regarding the private ownership. And so our intent was to start somewhere. And so, even though some of the accreditation institutions are more reputable than others, we feel like some requirements and some criteria are a starting point. And we can work with folks offline, or we can work separately to improve those. But that's the reason, to put something in place to try to mitigate these public safety issues.
Okay. No, I mean, I'm obviously a small business owner and appreciate not wanting to close any zoos down. But I am also concerned about just throwing out names of organizations in there. I mean, is there a better way that this bill can be amended to really get at what it seems that you're getting at is just private pet ownership?
We are getting at private pet ownership, or, in the case of someone that, maybe is not keeping an animal for a pet, but they are trying to run a roadside attraction or trying to create some type of small business venture, but they don't have the appropriate licenses. And so the core of the bill is really related to people, whether it's in a private ownership capacity or someone in a maybe attempted commercial capacity, who are not keeping these animals properly, and properly meaning not in a safe way or not in a humane way. And so, we believe that, we've carved out enough exemptions with the exemptions in the permit such that people that have a reasonable purpose to keep these animals, they can actually fit into one of the exemptions or the permit process with that extended lead time.
Are we going to finally know where these animals are?
Yep, there's actually a registration component of the permit, and it's a fantastic point. And so, and that's another reason that I think this will help some of the resources within Bliss. And so if someone registers for a permit, there's a registration database called out in the bill itself that we will actually track these animals such that, like the sample here in the fact sheet, we could produce a map and show whether it's law enforcement or an ambulance or somebody that, here are animals here. And the other benefit of that is it helps in disaster planning. So if something were to happen with all the other stuff that's underway in Bliss, I think any sort of risk we can take off the table will help. And so if there was a disaster that happened, I think this is only going to go to support that.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess, so if you were to just give me one liner, why should I be putting this on the table? I just, it's really hard for me to be able to just go back to my colleagues and say that this is the most important issue that I should be focused on.
I totally understand. The short answer I'll give you is because it's a non-controversial bill that's got bipartisan support that is closing a gap that's been in existence for a while, that if something happened, it would create huge headaches for Bliss. And so with very low effort, we can actually free up resources for your current issues, and we can close a gap and mitigate a risk that you don't want to crop up down the road. With the stuff that's happened recently with the police shooting and the water, I don't think Bliss needs another issue, happening, whether it's a year from now or 5 years from now. And so we feel like with very low effort, we can address this. And I'm not saying we're going to solve all your problems, but I think we can free up resources, USDA and police, to help alleviate some of the other issues. So that's the reason we would ask for your support to get this to the floor for a vote.
Okay, I'll consider it.
Okay. I really appreciate your time. I'm going to leave you both a business card. And if there's anything else we can do, like I said, that email will go out tonight, and hopefully the calls will stop to your staff.
Oh man, you guys. Senator Wolf.
Hi, nice to meet you. So what can I do for you?
Well, I know you have a very busy schedule, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Lots of work to do, in fact.
Absolutely. I'm here today to talk to you about the Animals and Public Safety Bill.
Is this the exotics animal bill?
This is. I know
Oh,
you
you've
have
been-
heard a lot about it.
Shutting my office down with this. Unbelievable.
Sure. I know that this has been a frustrating situation, and I'm actually glad you brought it up, because one of the things I wanted to talk about with you today was how we could more productively direct that kind of energy that's coming from your constituents and coming nationally.
Check out for a second.
Things that will help. Sure. No problem. Because I know your staff time is limited, and we want to make sure it can be used as productively as possible. Sure. So, for example, one of the things that we would love to do, instead of having so much energy directed inward towards the Capitol, is to really, we're reaching out to our members today. We've been doing this all week to ask them to instead talk to family and friends, to work on writing letters to the editor, to the Kewaukee Times, to really focus on doing things that will take pressure off of your offices and instead share information with their communities.
Yes, that would be great. I mean, we're getting a lot of opposition, too, so I'm not sure how much you can deal with stopping that those floodgates as well.
That's certainly a tough one. I'll certainly reach out to our national coalition. We are working with a number of groups that are, have interest in this issue, from the CDC to the American Veterinary Medical Association. So we'll do what we can. I can assure you of that. But I am limited in my reach.
Yeah.
Sure. The other way that we think we can certainly help maybe move forward and take some of the pressure off would be to bring the bill up for a vote on the floor. That would be one way that we could sort of move past this conversation and on to some of the other issues that I know are really facing the state right now and are on your plate.
Yeah.
So,
So tell me what this bill actually does. I'm getting a lot of misinformation.
sure. So this bill in particular, we're sort of calling it a report-in, phase-out system. The goal being that the number one thing we need for public safety and Bliss right now in terms of wild and exotic animals is to know where they are. We need to know when we're buying houses. We need to know when we're checking our school districts, our foundations, whether or not our neighbors have lions, tigers, or bears in their backyard. So this bill would first require that there would be reporting throughout the state of anyone that owns these animals. And then over time, there would be a phase-out as these animals either die or are transferred to more suitable accommodations. So it's very simplistic in how it works, and it would be an efficient way of moving Bliss from one of the 5 remaining states that has taken no action on this important issue to one of the 45 states that has affirmatively protected its citizens from the impacts of these dangerous wild and exotic animals.
Okay. So, does this apply to just private pet ownership, or who is this applying to?
Great question. So this just really applies to the private owners of wild and exotic animals. And I have, I know you're busy, but I have copies of the bill text and the fact sheet for both you and your staff. So I hope you'll have a chance to look through those. The bill specifically exempts a number of important categories, including wildlife sanctuaries, zoos, rehabilitation centers, groups that are really promoting the welfare and the safety of these wild and exotic animals. So we're hoping to redirect the existing population from these private owners to these more suitable accommodations.
Okay.
So, look at my inbox, man. Outlook doesn't lie. I'm just getting clobbered here. We got, the people are looking at us to represent them, not represent some animal somewhere. What do you say to the moms? I'm getting emails from moms whose kids are getting shot, whose, kids are getting poisoned, and, you're going to care more about some stupid tiger than you do my kid. What do you tell them?
It's a really tough position to be in, and I appreciate
And I'm in it, so
Yes,
tell me what I need to do.
absolutely. What I would say, if I was speaking with one of those mothers or fathers or members of the community, would be that there are some issues where the only way to solve them is to take action preemptively. We can't wait to fund the fire department until somebody's house is already burning down. We can't wait to have a police department until somebody's in the middle of getting robbed. This is just one of those issues where the problems that are caused by not having appropriate legislation are going to come up again and again and again. And it may be next week, it may be a few months from now, it may be a year, and I understand that that makes it seem like it's not pressing in the moment, but the only way to stop those things from happening is to pass a simple fix now, or at the very least, give the Senate an opportunity to make a decision about whether or not to take action.
But what is pressing in a moment is the election coming up.
Sure.
No, absolutely. Plus, I've got kids dying. I've got kids being sick. I mean, I still have not heard a justification of why your issue is way more important than kids getting sick.
I
mean,
certainly
just
wouldn't
don't
say
get
it's,
it.
sorry, I certainly wouldn't say that it was more important, but I would say the Senate has to deal with a lot of issues of varying importance all the time. And this is one that we still think belongs on your list and at the very least deserves the few minutes that it will take for a floor vote for at least the Senate to sort of get their voice out about this issue.
I mean, is it even a problem here in this state? I mean,
That's one of the
very
tough
rare
things is,
cases. I haven't heard very many in the last year or so.
sure, we don't often hear about it until it's really a problem. And speaking of the upcoming election, particularly if Governor Skipper is successful and he ends up leaving the governor's mansion for the White House, we're going to be in a position for an election, for new leadership in this state. And I don't want whoever comes in as governor next to end up in the same position that John Kasich did in Ohio when he allowed an executive order to labs governing the possession of these wild exotic animals right before the Zanesville, Ohio tragedy when 56 exotic animals were released into a community. That looked pretty bad politically to have had the opportunity to take action on an issue and not shown leadership. And so I would really hope that
He's running for president right now, though. Has that come up in the campaign at all?
I don't know that it's come up in the national campaign. That's a great question I don't have an answer to, but it certainly did have some play in the state of Ohio at the time of this
So we're having
incident.
people tell us Black Lives Matter, not Black Labs Matter. They don't care about animals. They want to care about their humans.
Sure. And that's really one of the times I know it's hard to be in leadership, but I know that our leaders at the same time have the ability to balance multiple important priorities. And I would hate for us to wait till a time when there was another incident like in Zanesville, when there was a big public outcry. And like we've seen with the mystery cat in Kewaukee right now, when these issues happen, the public cares deeply about the safety of their children, their families, their communities. And when this next incident happens, I think that there will be two outcomes. Either the citizens will look back at this moment in time and they'll say, why did we not take action when we had the opportunity to? Or they'll look back and they'll say, thank goodness that our state was able to show the leadership, even in a trying time, that other states have failed to do so and protected us against these types of dangerous situations. And I sincerely hope that they can look back and feel like, even if the bill doesn't pass, at least the Senate decided to take action to give a voice to those 19 senators who cared deeply enough about this to co-sponsor the bill.
So, I mean, just glancing at this bill, it does seem that you are affecting some of these smaller zoos. So, I'm a little bit concerned about that. So can you tell me exactly which types of zoos are exempt? I'm a small business owner. There's small zoos in my area. I'm just not sure. I can't be the senator who's putting people out of business.
Sure, we certainly don't want to do that. We want to encourage jobs, responsible jobs in the state. So the bill explicitly designs zoos as nonprofits operating for educational value. And then we essentially say that any zoo that's accredited by ANSI or any comparable body allowing for a status inspection will continue completely unaffected by the provisions of this legislation. There won't even be a reporting requirement. So they will continue without any onerous or additional requirements or regulations on their operation.
So how do I know what's comparable to the ANZI? How do I know?
Sure. So we essentially just say any organization, for example, the ZANI is one that's been up and coming lately, that has a similar standard of animal care requirement is permissible. And those are fairly easy, and the state can certainly maintain a database of which organizations have those types of regulations and which don't.
So, essentially, what is this bill really getting at then?
It's really getting at ensuring public safety by making it so that citizens are aware of any wild and dangerous exotics in their communities, and then phasing out the possession, because it's simply better for public safety to not have these animals in private ownership, particularly unregulated private ownership at this time.
Okay. And what species again are we talking about?
There are 4 main categories. It's actually on the first page. We're talking primarily about your large carnivores, your lions, your tigers, your bears, elephants, zebras, rhinoceroses, and then, of course, non-human primates, because there have been a number of incidences where there's both been animal welfare concerns, but then also real human safety risks. One of the areas in particular that I think will make this a more national issue coming up again is every time we have a new disease outbreak, there's real concern, from Zika virus to Ebola, real concern about animals in our communities and what they might be sharing. And I just want to reemphasize that I know that this is a politically tough climate, and I'm not asking you to co-sponsor this bill. And honestly, I even understand if in this current context you don't feel like you can in good conscience vote for this bill. All that I'm asking is that you give the constituents enough of a voice, the constituents that have worked hard on this, that believe in this, a voice, and allow the Senate to vote and see whether or not that voice will be realized one way or the other. So I would just really ask that you move it to the floor and let the Senate have a voice on it.
Okay, well, I'll take it under consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
And we'll work on those emails.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Oh my God.
Hello, Speaker Wolf, Matt
Hi,
McClaney.
nice to meet you.
Very nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
please sit down. So, what can I do for you?
Well, Speaker Wolf, the reason why I'm here today is to ask your help in bringing the Animal and Public Safety Act to a vote in the state Senate.
This isn't the exotic animal bill, is it?
It is
Oh,
the exotic
gosh.
animal
We've
bill.
been getting bombarded by all these emails and
My life
calls.
hell.
Just, can you make those go away?
Well, we can by once we
I'm going to check out a little
once we get this piece of legislation to a vote and hopefully to a successful collusion, then all that other stuff will go away. It's an issue that's really dear to a lot of people. In fact, the state of Bliss is one of only 5 states in the country
But
that
this is
currently
all
has
this
no.
man has been doing for like the last
to
2
my
weeks.
inbox. It's just insane.
I'm very sympathetic to you. I was an intern in undergrad for my state senator, and I was not in an important position like you. I was the master of the coffee machine, but I still had to deal with a lot of emails and a lot of constituent calls, and just when you try to get ahead on
like doing some
something,
volunteer work, you can come handle half this crap for me, I'm
I'll
telling
do
you.
that. I'll take you up on that. I'll definitely chip in. So just when you think you're trying to get ahead, somebody calls and emails you. Despite all those calls and emails, the big point behind that is the fact that the state of Bliss has fallen behind a national standard, and there are a lot of not every crisis comes in like a fury. We're currently in a quiet crisis in the state of Bliss, and it's the situation that we're in is the fact that there is no regulation governing the personal ownership of these exotic and wild animals. This bill solves that problem. We get some common sense laws on the books, and it allows us to be proactive in the issues that face this state as opposed to having to be reactive to after the fact. So what we're looking for today is just to bring this for a vote in the state Senate, and we would love to have your support, Speaker.
So I'm still confused on exactly what this bill does.
Sure. It does 3 major things. The first, we take a look at the entire animal kingdom, and we divide them into 5 different classifications. The ones that we're targeting are the ones that are inherently dangerous to human life, and we put some common sense regulations in place on how those animals are handled and who owns those animals. And that falls into the second part of what the bill does. The second part, it identifies what we're looking for in an owner of these exotic and wild animals. We want to make sure that they're able to properly meet the dietary needs of the animals, that they're able to have the facilities for these animals, and that they have the financial resources to adequately care for them. The third and final thing that the piece of legislation does is it establishes some basic oversight and rules and regulations, working with our Bliss Wildlife Resource Agency and the Bliss Wildlife Commission to make sure that all these things are affected. It's all about public safety, animal welfare, and public health. That's what this bill is all about. That's why I'm sitting before you today.
I'm sorry, I'm still confused. So, I mean, what are inherently dangerous species?
Sure. And do you have a copy of the
I
act?
don't,
Let me
actually.
give
No.
you and your aide a copy. Here's a copy of the legislation. There's a couple of fact sheets if you want to take a look at that later. But it's It's on the second page. We have,
Okay, I see.
say, Class 1 animals. Those are the ones that you might, if you thought of an animal, excuse me, that was dangerous, something that you wouldn't necessarily want to have in your home or to let your children play with in the backyard. Those are things like, wolves, bears, lions, tigers, that kind of stuff. So that's what we're looking at here.
Okay. Okay, and then, so that just essentially every single person who owns one of these animals is going to not be able to own them. So what about the zoos? I'm a small business owner.
We exempt zoos,
You exempt
wildlife
zoos.
sanctuaries, those circuses. We're not talking about any kind of rehabilitative sanctuary, anything like that. We're just talking about your average everyday citizen of Bliss owning one of these
Okay.
wild or exotic animals.
Okay. Okay.
So what do you tell the moms? I mean, half these emails I'm getting are from moms just saying, their kids are getting poisoned, their kids are getting shot, and, it's an election year, and this is impacting we're in an urban district, a key minority population. They're saying, Black Lives Matter, not Black Labs Matter. Why should we give a crap about animals?
Well, no, that's a fair point, and it's one that I think that we definitely need to address as a state. I mean, these are issues that have serious consequences, but I would say to them that this is a serious issue too, and it's one that there hasn't been an event like the lead poisoning in the water supply. There hasn't been an event like the racially motivated police shooting. What we're trying to do with this legislation is we're trying to prevent something like that from happening. And one of the most amazing things about this bill, and one of the things I was most heartened about, is the fact that we had positive conversations with people that are from across the political spectrum, whether it was Representative Craig or Representative Palmer, and those are two individuals who have very different worldviews, but we were able to have positive conversations with them about this legislation. This was a bipartisan bill, and this is something that brought us together as a state. And in a state, and in a time where we're divided racially, we're divided by class, we need a win. We need something that will bring us together, and I think that this legislation is a bipartisan opportunity for this state.
But I still just can't see putting this to a vote and wasting the time when it's not even an issue here.
I would say, just to kind of go back, that this is currently a quiet crisis in this state. And in the same way that the Milwaukee newspaper, they'll have those editorials and they'll say, this is a circus, this is a waste of the taxpayers' dollar. Actually, that same newspaper, has reported that there have been large cat sightings in the city of Milwaukee. And if something were to happen, if that cat were to attack a child or a next-door neighbor or anything like that, then they would be saying, why aren't there any laws on the books? Why hasn't the state legislature addressed this issue? So we've got an opportunity, instead of reacting to a mauling, instead of reacting to a dramatic escape like what happened in Zanesville, Ohio, which is a tragedy, we have an opportunity to get ahead of the curve on this issue, and we can join the 45 other states who have already passed very similar legislation.
But shouldn't we just wait another year on this? I mean, let's deal with the crises that we have right now.
I don't think we can afford to wait. I really don't.
You just don't have the time.
Let me mention it to you. Well, let me tell you a story with this. The statute that we based this off of came from the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee passed it in the early 1990s. And I would imagine that it probably wasn't on those state legislators' minds as well whenever they first started thinking about it. What changed that and what brought about that action in the state of Tennessee in the early 90s, and since that time, this statute and the one that we borrowed from heavily in 23 other states have utilized as well across the country. What brought that statute into being was the fact that a little girl was mauled to death in Nashville, Tennessee, from her father's pet cheetah. Now, up until that time, there were no real rules or regulations, but it took that little girl getting mauled to death for them to pass that bill. We don't know what the next event, we don't know what the next tragedy is going to be. We don't know what the future holds. What we do know is we have an opportunity here to make real and impactful change in the future of the state of Bliss. So we have to pass this session.
Well, couldn't just the locals deal with it this year and then we pick it up at a later date? I mean, I got lots of angry people.
I understand. And it's a difficult situation. It's a balancing act, especially when you're in leadership. You have to keep so many people happy. But this is a time and a place that calls for leadership from the top down. And this is where these local governments are going to be looking to the Capitol to be able to give them some direction and some oversight. What we can do with this legislation, a blanket proposal across the state of Bliss, we can be able to dramatically affect the future of this state.
Now, what exact animals is? I mean, what animals would you not include in something like this? What's your threshold there again?
If you look at on the second page there with the Class 3, it talks about. So it kind of gives you some examples about includes all species not listed in other classes and includes, but is not limited to, those listed in subdivisions 3, A through Q. And that things like, common domestic livestock, if you're, pet rabbits, non-poisonous reptiles, things like that, things that you would traditionally see in maybe a school or, your next door neighbor might have as a pet. So that's kind of what we're looking at here.
Okay, I still can't find the exemptions in here. Where are those laid out?
Exemptions for?
Well, you said my local zoos aren't affected, so where?
On the very last page, where it has, there's no charge and there's no permitting fees or anything like that from your zoos. And zoos are actually covered under the Animal Welfare Act, and a lot of organizations that charge, they're inspected by the Animal Plant Health Inspection Services. So this is geared towards that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm just a bit nervous here because I just don't see them specifically exempted in the bill, and I just have a feeling that this bill could really shut down these zoos. I don't see a list of exempted parties. And, I can't be the person who shuts down small businesses. So, are we willing to amend this bill if I were to bring it to a floor?
Of course, we're very proud of the bill, and we have a lot of co-sponsors. I'd have to discuss that with the folks that have already supported me on this, but we're definitely we're definitely amendable to any kind of changes in order to get some change and be able to get it passed this session. But we need a win, Speaker. We're hoping that you can give it to us. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We got another meeting coming.
Thank you,
I'll
Speaker.
consider it.
Thank
Okay,
you, Speaker.
Thank you.